Hey everyone, this is Miss Stans here, and today we are going to be discussing the basic elements of a story, which will be essential for all of us, especially for the podcast that you're going to be making in groups. So let me begin by discussing our objectives for today. The first objective is discuss intelligently the different parts of a plot, review the elementary parts of the plot of a story, apply the important elements in an oral short storytelling, reflect self-experience as compared to some concepts presented in a literary piece, draw the values reflected in a story, and prepare oneself in delivering a report through identifying the salient points for it. So this report is going to be edited or modified a little bit because of course your output for this particular lesson is already posted on your LMS, which means that it's going to be a different kind of output. So you're going to find that out later on when I present to you that particular output. So the basic elements and what we need to know are very simple. There are the following. So first, I give out the location and time where the story took place. See if you can guess what this particular element of a story is. So you already have two clues here, which are location, time, and of course where the story took place. So we call this, of course, the setting. Now the setting creates the mood of the entire story. It gives us a background of what the story may be about, and a good author or writer gives vivid details of the setting through the five senses. So the sense of smell, touch, sight, hearing, taste are very much essential when you are trying to make or compose your own setting. Now take a look at this particular picture and try to use your senses in order to describe this particular picture. So you are going to be given a few minutes to do this. Maybe the best thing for you to do is to write down your descriptions, and then you're going to combine them and create your own setting. So this is going to be essential in order for you to train your minds also in how you're going to write your own stories should you pursue writing your own stories in the future. Alright, our next element of a story is I give the meaning to the actions and performance in the story. I may be human or animal or an object. So your clues here are, of course, human or animal or an object, and the performer of the action of the story itself. So we call that, of course, our characters. Now, a character may be humans, creatures, animals, or anything, even things that are given life. They are performers or the ones who perform the actions to give the story meaning. This is done through characterization, which gives the writer the chance to describe his or her character. So we have two types of characters usually when we are writing a story, and we call them the protagonist or the good character, or the antagonist, those who are against the protagonist, so they are not necessarily bad characters. So sometimes bad characters are also considered protagonists depending on the story itself. A character may be described in many ways. So you may use adjectives to describe or give your characters an attitude, whether good or bad. So let's say, for example, our character is someone who is big or tall, and someone who is not afraid to show off or something like that. So you may use adjectives in order for you to create what kind of characters you would like to put in your story. So here there are several characters that you may describe on your own. or in your own minds there. So they are, of course, sometimes sinister, sometimes they're cute, sometimes they're creatures that are extraterrestrial. So there are superheroes, there are villains also, so on and so forth. Of course, this is another example. So they may be in the form of animals, so you can describe them in your own way. So a tiger is usually, someone who is scary or someone who is giving a bad aura or an attitude. But here in the picture, he is depicted as someone who's cute, someone who is, able to mingle with other cute animals as well. And of course, we know who the protagonist and the antagonist here in this particular story. So although Mario and Bowser are both from a video game, they still are part of a story in the Super Mario world. So we already know who is the villain and who is, of course, the hero in that particular game that we have. Alright, next. There are several factors in analyzing characters. So physical appearance, or what they look like, their personality, their background, their motivation, their relationships, and of course their conflict or their struggle. So always remember that and keep that in mind when you are trying to write your own stories or your characters. Now for the third element, I give the characters spice. I decide if they're against each other or nature or themselves. So this is what we call conflict. When you say conflict, there are 3 types. Basically, the definition is that a conflict is a struggle between 2 forces in a story. So one is man versus man, wherein the main character has conflict with another character. It may be the antagonist or another character per se. Second, man versus nature, wherein the man or the character has a conflict with nature. And finally, man versus self, wherein the character has a so-called inner conflict or a conflict with himself or herself. Next, I give the smooth flow of the story. What am I called? So we call that the plot. Now, a plot has 5 components, namely exposition, rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. So an exposition is the start of the story or before the action starts. Rising action is the series of events and conflicts in the story that lead to the climax. Climax, or the turning point, the most intense moment, either mentally or in action. It's the highest point, as you can see in this pyramid that we call. And then after the climax, we have the falling action, wherein all of the actions which follows the climax. Finally, there's what we call a resolution, or the conclusion, the tying together of all the threads. So there are ways that a writer writes his or her plots, and these are what we call special techniques. One is suspense, which you put excitement or tension. One is flashback, wherein you interrupt the normal sequence of events to tell about something that happened in the past. Surprise ending, wherein the conclusion that reader does not expect. And finally, foreshadowing. Foreshadowing means you are giving hints as to what would happen to the main characters in the story. So here I will be presenting now some stories wherein you are tasked to do a what you call video podcast. So first is The Good Deed. This is written by Pearl S. Buck, and it's the story of old Mrs. Pan and her journey living in a new place and meeting new people and how her actions would affect others. Next, we have Androclus and the Lion by Michel de Montaigne. The story of Androclus and his encounter with the lion and how their encounter would change the way we see wild animals forever. Third is what you call Our Lady's Juggler by Anatole France. The story of a servant whose only talent helps him become a moral example to others. Fourth, The Piece of String by Guy de Maupassant. The story of a man whose life suddenly changes because of a piece of string, and how lies can turn people from good to bad. The Passover Guest by Sholom Aleichem. The story of a man's intrusion in a house and the surprise that the family would see in his presence. So, if you will be going to your LMS, which we will